What is happening, everybody? I'm Larry Roberts.
And I'm Sara Lucy, and this is Branded, your comprehensive guide to creative branding.
And on this amazing episode of the podcast, very radio-esque this morning, our guest is Emily Aborn. She's a copywriter, she's a speaker, and she even has her own podcast. Go figure. That's a rare thing. She works very, very closely with her clients and creates businesses that are built on relationship and community. And I think that's huge. You know, a lot of people right now are trying to figure out how come my podcast isn't helping me accomplish my goals. And I think a lot of times it's because we failed to create that community. So I love to see that word right there. Today, she's going to be talking about, I'm hitting puberty. Today, she's going to be sharing about how we can infuse our brand messaging with curiosity and why it matters. So I'm very curious as to how that works. So Emily, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And I agree. It's always like a curiosity-provoking topic in and of itself, which is why it's fun.
I have a whole chapter in my book all about curiosity and how I think of curiosity as the root of expertise, and the topics we're an expert in are the topics that we are just endlessly curious about. So I'm really curious about your take on curiosity and what that means to you and how you talk about it.
Well, it's interesting you say that because there's different types of curiosity, which I want us to totally get into. I have a hunch of what Sarah's is after listening to your show a bit. But I think of it as kind of like you said, it's like pulls us towards something. So it's like this intrigue in something. It doesn't necessarily need to be topic related. It could be like a person or a thing or a next path, right? But it is this kind of like pull that guides us along through life to the next thing. So when we're using our copy and our words and our branding, we can kind of do this naturally in certain ways and like also avoid certain things that turn people's curiosity off. So it's not like a faucet. It's more like a like a slow kind of thing. But there are ways that we can totally shut it down.
That's kind of cool. You know, and real quick before we go on, I just love how we've probably done about, 30 episodes since Sarah's book came out. And every guest we have, regardless of the topic, she has a chapter in her book about that topic. It's the craziest thing. It's so wild, but that's amazing. I love it.
Well, I want to read that chapter.
Because you've never mentioned your book that's sitting behind you and you point out constantly.
Oh, you mean this one here? Oh, or that one
look
there?
at that.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that.
Weird. It's weird.
Look at that.
I just had to jump in there. No, but I mean, I'm very curious about a variety of things. And in all honesty, and of course, every episode I have to slip in some Chat GPT talk too. Just yesterday, they released the advanced voice functionality on Chat GPT. And man, I found it at like 2:30 in the morning. And I stayed up the rest of the night chatting with Chat GPT. And I was just giddy with curiosity as to how I could potentially use this new functionality. And me and Megan, that's what I named her, off the crazy robot Megan. I know you said you don't know much about pop culture, but there is a movie about a little female robot. I guess she's female. Do robots have genders? They dressed her up as a chick anyways, and she went apeshit and started killing everybody. So that's why I named her Megan. But it really sparked my curiosity there. So expand on that. How are there different types of curiosity?
Okay, so this is like not my original concept. I don't know who gets the credit for it, but you can Google it or ask Chat GPT or Megan or whatever you want. But the four are, and like it's fun to see where you fall, right? But it's also fun to think about like, ooh, where does my listener or my ideal kind of client fall in? So there's the fascinated, and this is like almost 30% of the population, where you have like a lot of broad interest and you have a lot of information about a lot of things because you're interested in a lot of things. So eclectic reading might be kind of like you'll read across different genres and watch shows across different genres. They also can be like really interested in like politics and news and current events and pop culture and like things happening. So that's the fascinated. And then there's the empathizer. This is like a little bit smaller of a portion, 25%. They're really interested in like people, what makes people tick, like psychology, sociology, how people get together in groups, like anything, personality, people, that's their thing. And then there's the problem solver. And this is a lot of us, like you'll probably fall into like one or two categories. If you fall into all the categories, you'd be fascinated, right? So the problem solver is like, if you have something that you're trying to get to the bottom of, you will go into that topic very, very deeply and intensely until the problem is solved or until you find like an innovative solution. But it's all about like a really focused kind of curiosity. And then there's the avoider, and like they're not listening to your podcast right now because they're not very curious or interested. They just don't have that natural sort of pull in them to like find out things. You could probably become curious somewhere along in your life if you're an avoider, but just not really there. And we all know people like this, I'm sure. So my guess was that Sara was a fascinated because she seems to know a lot about a lot of things. And every time you bring something up on your show, she like has a random factoid about it.
And a chapter in her book.
Okay, well then Larry is the problem solver because one thing comes up and he spends 14 hours on YouTube figuring out every possible, like anything. That's why I don't have to do research anymore. Anything that comes up, I'm just like, I'm gonna go ask Larry.
That is 100% a problem solver's modus operandi. I'm an empathizer, which means I went and searched about both of you and wanted to learn about your personalities and your dynamic, and like that was fascinating to me. So,
interesting.
Oh God, what'd you learn?
There you go. Well, I met your dog, Kevin.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
But I will tell you, Sara, before you jumped into the green room, before we hit record, Emily did tell me that she has been stalking you.
I mean, like Instagram stalking, not like, and LinkedIn. I mean, you'll see.
No, she was
LinkedIn
in your
makes it
backyard.
obvious. LinkedIn's like, this person was looking at you.
That is literally the worst feature.
Yeah.
I know.
Can we get rid of that?
Yeah. I want to be able to stalk somebody and them not know it, because that's really not stalking anymore.
Do you remember on Instagram, when Instagram like first blew up, there was a feature that you can go and see what photos other people were liking?
Oh, I did not know
that. Ruined so many relationships.
Oh, because like one member of the relationship will be liking somebody else's photos, and then the other significant other would see what they liked. And I mean,
Facebook borders on that now still. Like you still do get updates about people that you're like, I have to turn all the, I don't know what.
I do too.
Doing,
I get notifications. I'm like, I don't care what Joe Blow over here commented on. That's irrelevant to me. Yeah. But you got to be careful. And I'm old, so I can't even fathom trying to date in a social media world. I mean, I'm curious as to how people pull it off.
It's not fun.
That would not be my area of expertise. So I'm going to go ahead and skip that question if that was the question.
All right, let's go into Sara Teaches Dating 2024. It's a horrible place. Don't join.
So, Emily, how do you channel your curiosity into like brand building, and how can curiosity help us develop our brands?
Okay, so I think first of all, like if you are a business owner or creator, it's helpful to be curious, right? Because you're going to bring that natural, like whenever you bring something to the table that you're curious about, it comes through in whatever you're sharing. I find typically when we're using it in our messaging, the goal is to be like, we want to create curiosity. We want to create interest. We want to invite people in rather than like push things in their face. But we also don't want to make things like there's a line you can cross where it's like you're just too confusing and too vague, and your curiosity is actually like, that does not make sense. So we're going to talk about like, how do we kind of toe that line? Because I always say like, curiosity does not result in confusion. I still need to understand who you are, what you do, that kind of thing. And I had a guest on my show. She's the host of the Grammar Girl podcast, probably like my biggest podcast crush ever, Mignon Fogarty. Mm-hmm. She's like a super grammar nerd. And she says that every year, I loved this. She's like, every year I go through like my content and I ask myself this question: would I follow me? Would I be interested in me? Would I listen to me? Would I look at my Instagram? And I think like it kind of starts there. And if you can't answer it for yourself, grab a friend like Sara or Larry and be like, or have Chat GPT roast you. Chat GPT does roasts on your content, and ask yourself, like, am I actually interesting? Am I creating things that are interesting? There may be reasons that it's not. Like maybe you're actually just not really interested in it. Maybe it's you're trying to like button it up a little bit too much and like keep your personality locked away. But asking yourself that question, I think, is a good starting point for any business owner.
That's kind of cool. It's a perspective I've never taken before. Would I want to friend me?
Yeah.
Of course.
Would I want to be my friend?
Yeah. Yeah.
Would I LinkedIn stalk me? I would actually LinkedIn stalk myself.
That's so funny because I Facebook stalked you this morning. I was like, all right, let me see what she looks like. Let's see what's going on here. Because you mentioned your husband and your dog. And I was like, all right, let's see. And Clyde, I love the fact that your dog's name is Clyde.
I know. It's so perfect.
That's so hilarious because, growing up in the 80s, there was a movie called Every Which Way But Loose with Clint Eastwood. And he had a pet orangutan. And the pet orangutan's name was Clyde. So,
oh my God.
All right, if I have a book chapter for every topic, you have an obscure 80s movie reference.
Okay,
for
I own
every
that.
topic.
I own that. I do. I own that. I love 80s and 90s pop culture. So yes, but Clyde is such an amazing name because Clyde was very, very strong. He's an orangutan, and whenever Clint Eastwood needed him to do something, like he would have Clyde tear up the bad guys' cars. So he'd be like, Clyde, strip the caddy. And Clyde would go over to the Cadillac and start ripping the doors off and that trunk lit. So it was really fun. So as soon as I saw Clyde, I thought, oh my God, I got to watch that movie again.
I'm going to have to train him to do that.
Yeah. Just go sick him. So anyways, but again, going back, getting serious again, or at least somewhat focused on the conversation. That is, again, a perspective that I've never taken. And I wonder now if we were to go back and audit our social media channels, would we want to follow us or would we want to friend us? And I think this ties in so beautifully with the fact that we were at a conference last week. We had an amazing LinkedIn panel that was there. And I learned so much about LinkedIn and LinkedIn engagement. And, a lot of people sit and they struggle on whatever social media platform they choose to be on. But maybe if they did that audit, they'd realize what's missing, and maybe that would spark some curiosity and allow them to dig into issues a little bit deeper, questions or topics a little bit deeper, and start creating more compelling content.
I actually do that for my own Instagram. Anytime someone new follows me on my personal Instagram, I will go through my entire feed and see if there's anything embarrassing that I should remove before they get to it.
So
you are social anxiety.
Yes, you're just chopping things that don't align with every single person.
I'm a people pleaser.
So I think another thing that comes right along those lines, to your point of the LinkedIn, is am I actually speaking? Am I being engaging? Am I engaging with other people and not just basically myself, talking about myself all the time, sharing my own message all the time? It's why at the beginning of our conversation, I like to ask you who really you speak to, because, and I don't love when people go on and they just talk about their own story or their own experiences. We want to really be relating to the person on the other side. And that is where I think on LinkedIn, on all the social media, we can all go a little bit awry. We're oh, it's the me show. But it's so much of it comes down to just engaging. When somebody leaves me a comment on a post, I'm oh my God, they're the best person ever. It feels so good to all of us. I just wrote back to this big time copywriter yesterday, and I was writing him a really personalized email, and he said, thank you for such a personalized email. Sometimes it just feels like I'm shouting into a void. And he's made it. It was a good reminder that we all need that, so your people want that too. They want you to be engaging with their stuff. And so I think a lot of curiosity comes down to also being curious about other people.
Oh, I think that's, yeah. I mean, we talk about podcasting all the time with anyone who's trying to build a brand. And I think that's just another reason why either having a podcast or guesting on podcasts is such a smart idea, because that puts other people in your content. So when you're posting content every day, you're highlighting somebody else instead of just yourself.
On my show, I love even using people's names when I know that they've told me something, or I know they're listening. I'm hello, TC. I can hear you. I can see you right now. Not really see you, but yeah, it's fun. It's great. And it makes people feel part of the conversation. I'm not an actual
Hey, you.
We're hearing all kinds of stalker-esque type commentary here. I'm watching you, TC.
Hopefully he's not listening to this one.
Thanks for coming on the podcast, even though you're not on the podcast. Good Lord. So
Do you have
Well,
an 80s, maybe an 80s movie reference is appropriate?
I actually, son of a bitch, I actually had an 80s TV show reference because TC was the helicopter pilot on Magnum PI.
Never seen it.
Yeah, with Tom Selleck. It was a big show in the
Oh,
80s.
he's from Friends.
Well, he showed up on Friends a little bit. Yeah, he dated Rachel.
Monica.
Damn it, I was so close. You know, what
He was
was it?
Richard.
I had a 33% chance of being right there, and I still flubbed it up.
Yep.
Oh, well, it is what it is. I'm curious as to what Emily is feeling right now while sitting here on the podcast.
How am I feeling?
Yes.
I'm feeling great. Thank you for asking.
Well, yes, that's
I'm
great.
slightly warm because I'm in New Hampshire and I have a wood stove going, but
Oh, that sounds cozy. I'm curious as to, I see your Scrabble squares in the background. Are
Yes.
you a big Scrabble fan?
I am. See, so okay, this is actually a super good example.
Yes,
like,
I know. That's
I'm
why I
a
use
word.
it.
Yeah, this
I'm
is
a
so great.
professional.
So I'm a word nerd and like I love
Same.
Scrabble and what's the other one? Crosswords, you know,
Mhm.
all the word stuff. Wordle, connections, all of that. So these Scrabble letters on my wall here are a great example of like how we can in little tiny ways create curiosity, which is just like putting our personality in places. And both of you have very personality filled backgrounds, and it's like such a good way to generate. It just like sparks your brain to life. You know, you're like, ooh, I want to know more about this person. The fact that your book is titled Red Hat or Under the Red Hat, it makes me wonder, like, is it about you? Like, what is under the red hat? I need
it
to
is
know because
about
now
me.
I
Thank
can
you for
see you.
asking. Yes. See, and that's the whole idea. Is that's why I named it what I named it, because I want people to ask what is under the red hat, because it's all about branding. And people think the red hat's the brand, but it's not. It's everything that's under the red hat that is the brand. Yeah.
I named mine Open This Book
Amazing.
because I wanted people to open the book.
Oh my God, these are amazing. Okay. So I think this brings me to something else that like we can do that helps create curiosity, which is not to close loops. And actually, I think, Sarah, you talked about this. I think it was in your podcast pitching episode. I don't remember, but you talked about like keeping things like open looped and open ended, which is like not leading the witness, I guess, if I had a term for it. But like not telling people what they should think, but letting them like create their own sort of questions and their own sort of thinking from what we do. And I love doing this with blogs. Like instead of a blog that's just like do this, which by the way, people will do wrong anyway. And then they'll be like, it didn't work. But I like kind of giving them their own sort of like, you might apply it this way if you know, or try this. But like not giving them any one sort of 100% certainty, you know? And I think keeping that loop open brings people in more than like pushes them away.
That's really interesting. I'm curious. I feel like I'm just going to use that word so many times, not even on purpose. How do you incorporate like curiosity into things like headlines without it becoming clickbaity?
Oh, so good. Yeah. So I love hooks, but like tasteful hooks, right? And I think that there's a couple, like asking a question is a really nice hook. That is such a good one. Putting your personality into a hook is nice, including like a little element of a surprise. And here's what I would say is one, like keeping things short. Obviously, people have like kind of short attention spans, it seems nowadays. But I think that we confuse, like, this is a great example of where we confuse curiosity with like something it's not. It's not a hook if you're just like all caps or all emojis. Like, that's not curiosity inducing.
That's yelling.
It's just yelling. Yeah. So I think like asking people questions, this is where I do find value in like a tool like Chat GPT, because it can often help you take something that isn't that curiosity inspiring and turn it into something that's curiosity inspiring, because it does a good job of like asking, how can I make this now about them versus me?
See, and I'm sitting here thinking about the curious aspect of things, and I'm going back to a conversation I had one day late last week. I went to dinner with a gentleman, and we were talking about sales and how early on entrepreneurs that are trying to build their brand, they're so desperate to make the sale. And we also hear from influencers like the Gary V's and the Grant Cardones and the Alex Hormozis and all the big salesy influencers, where you just give everything away for free. And we see so many people that do that, and then they're like, Well, how come I'm not selling nothing? How come I'm not making any money? Well, you're giving it all away for free. So I was talking to this gentleman. He's an amazing sales coach. And he goes, well, here's what I do. And this is why I'm making money. And well, he didn't say, and you're not, but he did say that. I just don't want to admit it. And he goes, and you're not. He goes, because I tell them that they need to do it. And I tell them what the result's going to be, but I don't tell them how. So the sales process is generating that curiosity of how do I go from point A to point C without giving away point B. So you have to generate that curiosity and you have to get them intrigued and engaged with your process and you as an individual and you as your brand in order to take it to that final step. And I think we're so many of us that are new business owners or small business owners, we're missing out on generating that curiosity. So here's how I frame this question. How do we approach this in a way where we can sell by creating curiosity in whatever our service or our product is?
So I love what I don't know his name, but I love what the sales guy said to you. And I kind of have the same philosophy when it comes to like my own podcast, which is like kind of spoon feeding people everything you know, where if they were to sit down and like literally write down everything you said, they probably could do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
But you are kind of creating this body, I guess, of content or body of work that helps keep them engaged and keep them going, but they're never really getting they're not like having you implement or apply it, right? So specific to their business too. That's the other key, I think, with going back to the open loops. Like I'm never specifically telling somebody you should do this because I don't know their unique business, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So I think like keeping things, in this case, I guess keeping things like a little more vague and open-ended is good, but still using specific examples. But yeah, I think that's my answer.
Okay.
I think I do kind of the opposite, maybe. So I will tell people how to do what I do. And that's for like a very specific reason. Like when I go on podcasts or write anything. And if they don't have the budget to pay me and they can go do it themselves, I'm not losing anything.
Yeah.
Because they wouldn't have paid me anyway. But if they do have the budget, they would rather pay me to do it because knowing that I do know how to do it and I can do it well, than have to learn how to do it themselves because their money isn't worth as much as their time. And by telling them how to do it, I just proved I know how to do it. I feel like that might be the opposite.
I think it's the same. I'm talking about the same. I think
Okay.
I'm talking more from a philosophical perspective and you're talking more from a how-to. So it's like actually perfect. But like I will pretty much tell them everything I do. It's different for both of us, it's a little bit different because like writing and brand, like actually creating things visually is slightly different. Maybe, sort of, not really.
You can't teach someone to write.
Yeah.
Maybe sort of, kind of, not really.
No, I think you can. I don't know.
Well, I was a copywriter by trade. Like my background was copy. And I was asked several times, like, teach someone how to write better. And like, I can teach you better grammar. I can teach you sentence structure. But if you're not a writer, I can't teach you how to write.
I know. I'm like 50% with you. It depends. But no, I think I'm with you.
Well, expand on it a little bit, Emily. I'd love to hear your perspective. If you're only 50% on with her, what's the 50% that you're countering with?
No, I think I'm 100% with you, Sarah.
Oh, I just called you on the carpet and you changed your position. Oh,
I needed time. I need time sometimes to think on things.
I think that's true of like a lot of things though. Like there's so many things that they almost have to come naturally.
But I don't know if you could teach somebody logo and branding because I think some people just have it and some people don't.
Exactly. Like the graphic design, it's like if you can't look at something and know like that's good or that's bad, you can't teach that.
So that's why we spoon feed them. And then they say, I need your help.
Fair.
And I think maybe you're spot on there with the spoon feeding. You know, you don't just give them the whole feast. You just give them a little taste and a little bite and go, here's kind of what you're looking at. And that's something that I've noticed over the years, being I don't even know if I still am, but I was a massive Gary Vee fan. And even if you go to his content today, it's like how to rule social media in 2024. And you watch the video and you're like, he didn't even say anything about how to do social media at all. I don't even know what he said. I'm looking for steps. I'm dumb. Give me 10 steps. Okay. If you want to rule, so do this, do this, do this. And this is the result. But so I don't know that he's giving things away. And I'm really curious. That's about the 32nd time we've said that word in 25 minutes. But anyways, I'm curious as to how you do that, because I almost feel like it's a lie. It almost feels like he's like
a bait and switch.
Yeah, it's almost like a bait and switch.
Smoke and mirrors.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, all those things. Illusion.
Yeah, I'm definitely not talking about being bait and switch. Or oops, did we lose her?
I got tired of her shit. I'm just kidding, not really. Yeah, I guess her internet dropped apparently. Just wait.
Sarah, we missed you.
I got kicked out.
Emily was like, I'm so glad she's gone. I was like, yeah, me too. It's cool.
He literally has a recording. I did not.
He literally has a recording.
I got kicked out. Anyway, bait and switches.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely not talking about that. I really do stand by, like, I think you can give people like the step by step, but break it down. That maybe the problem with the folks you were talking about, like give it all away, is they do it all at once. And then people are like, okay, this is overwhelming. And they never actually take any action towards it. And then they also never take any action towards reaching out and hiring the person because it's overwhelming. Like, how many of those PDFs have you downloaded that tell you exactly how to do XYZ? And you're like, okay, I'll never do that.
I am 100% guilty of being that person. I've spoken for our friend Alex and Filippo at his events, and I send him the video of my presentation, and then I watch it on the event, and I'm like, who let me do this? I have crammed like 5 hours worth of content into 15 minutes. People are like, can we watch this on like half speed? What is happening? I'm like, well, if I'm going to teach you how to do this, then you also have to know this, and you have to know how to do this, and you need all of this back knowledge. Let me teach you that.
I think we've all done that. And I think that is an exact like curiosity. Not I don't like to say killer, but it does shut it down because people are like, okay, great. And they feel overwhelmed. It's like when you add way too much jalapeno or cayenne pepper to something, you're like, no longer can I eat this, but a little spice was nice.
That is a great
Ask me.
That's an amazing analogy.
How I know.
Yes.
Ask me how I know.
No, so Emily, do you know Alex? Are you friends with Alex? Just out of curiosity.
I am on Podmatch. I hope we're becoming friends. I want to be BFFs. I did submit a video for the upcoming podcast event, and it got selected, and it's on bio writing and how we can like add curiosity to our bios, because you guys made a fantastic point in your pitching, which I could do like 30 episodes on podcast pitching.
Yeah.
And I look back at my pitch to yours and I'm like, this could have actually been a little bit better.
That worked.
I could have binged the episodes before I wrote to you. That would have been.
I'm curious. What did you say?
I just said like, hi, you guys sound like so much fun, which you do. But it was a little like, it was like, okay, you could have.
We've laughed a lot on this episode. I can tell you that.
That is true.
But, it's funny because Sarah and I, we go through Podmatch and we get on here. We get on Zoom and we go through all of the submissions. We go, what about this person? No, probably not. What about this person? Oh, that sounds fun. Oh, yeah, she sounds cool. Let's try. Let's check that out. So your pitch was effective. I'll tell you that. So.
Hi, Sara and Larry. You two are a lot of fun. I would love to have a conversation with you as a copywriter helps people with brand messaging on how our brands can actually spark more curiosity. We can chat about do's and don'ts when it comes to creating curiosity, a pull/spark in your copy, simple actions to take, and how it aligns with everything you folks help people with as well. See, this is a really good one.
Okay.
And I mean, I could talk about pitching all day too. So you didn't give a massive bio. You just said like, as a copywriter helps people with brand messaging. That's all we need to know about like your job so that we know that you are capable of having that conversation. And you gave us a hook, which like sparks curiosity. So like, that's already a hook. And then you said the do's and don'ts, simple actions, like that's proving that you're going to bring value. So you nailed it.
Okay. This is great
Congrats.
that we use this as an example because we're literally showing how to, this is what I talk to all the time is like when you're pitching or using your bio, not using all of this industry jargon that only you care about. Like how many bios have you read that all say nothing because they say everything about their industry or everything about what they've accomplished. So I think this is a good, like we used a fun example, which I didn't expect to happen. So now I'm feeling
People have
nervous.
done that to me. I've been on podcasts
nervous.
to talk about pitching and guesting, and people have like actually read my pitches multiple times on podcasts. So like I had to do it to somebody.
I had a guest show called She Built This, which I recently sundowned. I don't know the term, but we let that go.
Killed.
You hilled, yes.
Yeah.
And and I would get the most I still get awful pitches. I'm like, okay, first of all, if you notice, maybe the last episode is called The Last Episode. That would be the place to probably start with the pitch. But secondly, no.
I spoke about this at the Badass Business Summit last week, and I screenshot pitches that we've gotten for branded and put them in the presentation. And I just put them up. I'm like, all right, y'all tell me what's wrong with this.
Yeah.
And one of them was subtle because it was like, I loved your conversation with one of the guests talking about something, and the topic was just completely wrong. It's like you're talking about like brand building. I'm like, we talked about taxes on that episode.
My favorite. And you said that. You said, we don't want to talk to authors about their books.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Which I constantly bring up my book.
Spoon feed us all the information, but you're spoon feeding us the information in your book. Then I want to have a conversation about it.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. We don't want to hear about your book. We want to hear about content that's in your book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much different.
So Emily, I want to hear about your podcast. You brought it up a couple of times. What's your show?
My show is called Content with Character, and it's all about like, not just content and creating more, and putting it out into the ether, but really like infusing our personality into it too, which I think when you start using your personality in any branding that you're doing, that's how you create curiosity. That's like all of the big brands. I know I don't need to tell you to this, but all of the big brands still use personality in their branding.
Yeah, it's funny because I lost Sarah again for a second there, but she's back. But we were both at that Badass Business Summit last week, and I was talking about AI and thought leadership, and I was trying to use the word iterative, and it would not come out. And I just spazzed right there. I was like, and I finally just said, that's the remix. And then I went to say it again, and it still wouldn't come out. And I finally just had to say F it and move on. And I used that. Sarah happened to she did some recording for me. She happened to catch that clip. And I put that out as a reel and a TikTok and a video. And dude, people were loving it. They were eating it up because it showed my personality. And it showed vulnerability, and it showed, I have no idea what happened with that word, but they loved it because it showed that personality. So I love the fact that that's what you talk about, and you bring that to the forefront, because so many times people lose that, especially new podcasters.
Yeah.
I can't remember where I first heard this, but I heard like when I started my podcast, I used to edit out every like sip of water I took. Like I would go through it with a fine-tooth comb.
Oh yeah.
And then I heard something that was like, when we say and there's actually like a evolutionary reason behind it, and people react in different ways, and it humanizes you. So every mistake you make on stage or in this interview, which we've all made a couple, it humanizes us. And people are like, oh, I actually like them better now because they've made a mistake. And so I think it's a good reminder, not that we want to be like walking around like a hot mess, but if you just so happen to be, you're going to be the most relatable person on the planet. Go you.
Well, hey, Emily, I'd love for people to be able to relate to you even more so. So take a minute, tell people where they can find you.
Okay, awesome. So the easiest place to find me in all the places you like to hang out is emilyaborn.com. And it's like acorn with a B.
That's awesome. Whose dog?
That's my dog.
That's your dog.
Clyde. Thank you, Clyde. ending us.
It
where we
wasn't mine
started.
this time.
I know. I was like, all right,
So
well, it
sorry.
didn't sound like your
They're
dog. No,
upstairs.
don't even sweat it, Emily. It's all good. This is that humanity. This is that human side of things. So I love it. I'm glad that Clyde got in on the episode. I wanted to meet Clyde anyhow. So anyways, Emily, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I had fun. Hopefully you had fun. And I think we were able to deliver some value when it comes to curiosity as well.
Thank you both so much for having me. It was awesome to meet you.
That's cool, man. Hey, if you were listening to this episode and, well, you managed to make it through even with Sara cutting in and out on us, do us a favor and slam that subscribe button so we can continue to bring you these very human episodes each and every week. And with that, I'm Larry Roberts.
I'm Sara Losi, and we'll talk to you next week.